Mama Muna and her husband arrived in Ijede town, living in a house close to the university quietly, and her presence was unnoticed when she first arrived. She set up her food stall just outside the bustling gate, where hungry students and faculty members streamed in and out every day. The aroma of her cooking began to drift through the air, and before long, a lot of people noticed the new food vendors in the community. Her signature dish, Nigerian jollof rice and amala with a rich spicy soup, caught the attention of many. Students who had rushed through their day with barely enough time to eat began to stop at her shop to eat, and the moment they take a bite, they would always come back the next day, and the circle continues. Before long, there was always a long queue stretching out in front of a shop from morning until evening. Nobody knew where Mama Muna had come from or why she always wore the same faded wrapper and headscarf, her face lined with age and her eyes constantly darting. What they did know was that Mamuna's food was irresistible. Customers would come to her shop in droves, already planning their next meal. But behind the calm exterior, though, Mama Muna hid a dark secret. At first, it was small and almost imperceptible. Husbands began staying out late, lingering at Mama Muna's shop long after they had eaten. The men in the community who once rushed home for dinner now avoided their wives' cooking, but instead they would praise Mama Muna's food to anyone who would listen. "It is unlike anything I've ever tasted," one of them boasted. "My wife's food tastes like nothing now." Women, too, found themselves drawn to the store. They would buy her food for their husbands, hoping to match her flavors, but only growing more addicted themselves. Little by little, marriages in the town began to crumble. Husbands who once shared meals with their families now spent all their time at Mama Muna's shop, leaving their wives heartbroken and bewildered. Some women began to suspect there was more to the situation than just good cooking, but no one could explain the strange hold Mama Muna seemed to have on the men. Lecturer Kola was one of the first to fall under Mama Muna's spell. He had been married for years, but lately he found his wife's cooking unbearable. Every night, he would insult her, pushing her food away and storming out. He spent hours at Mama Muna's shop, talking about how she was the only one who knew how to cook real food. Soon, his visits became more frequent and then more personal. But then, Kola was not the only one drawn to Mama Muna. Several other wealthy and well-respected men began hanging around our stall at odd hours, doing chores such as fetching firewood and even stirring pots. They seemed eager to help, as though compelled by something beyond reason. The women of the town grew increasingly alarmed, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. Their husbands had become distant and uninterested in their families as they become increasingly obsessed with Mama Muna's food. One evening, the wives decided they had had enough. They gathered and marched to the town chief's house, demanding that something be done. The chief, a wise and respected man, agreed to summon Mama Muna, but when she arrived, her face was calm, but her eyes flickered with something dark and unreadable. "Mama Muna," the chief began, "the women here claim that you have cast a spell over their husbands. They say that the men refuse to eat at home and that their families are suffering because of you. What do you have to say?" Without a word, Mama Muna opened the cooler she had brought with her, revealing a steaming pot of jollof rice and peppered meat. The smell filled the room, and even the chief could not resist. He took a bite, then another. His eyes glazed over as he tasted the food. A smile crept across his face, and he turned to the wives. "You must learn from her," he began, his voice thick with satisfaction. "No man could eat this food and not fall in love with it. Mama Muna is simply a great cook. Perhaps if you learn the ways, your husbands might return to you." The women were surprised and furious, but the chief's word was final. They had no choice but to leave, their hearts heavy with confusion and fear. What power did Mama Muna hold over their men? They all wondered. After deliberating for a while, they vowed to find out the truth, no matter what it takes. Several weeks passed, and every plan made by the women to know Mama Muna's secret ended in futility. They even asked the woman to apply for a job at Mama Muna's place, but she rejected her as if she's aware of their plans. But as the saying goes, that every day is for the thief and one day is for the owner, Nemesis soon caught up with Mama Muna. One night, as the town slept, a young student named Shola stood outside a hostel trying to catch some air in the darkness. The power had gone out again and the heat was unbearable. Mama Muna was walking towards the refuse dump, looking around to see if no one was watching. As Shola stood there, she noticed a figure moving through the shadows near the refuse dump. Curious, she squinted into the darkness and saw Mama Muna bent over, going through the trash. Shola's heart raced as she realized that Mama Muna was collecting used menstrual pads. Shola watched in horror as Mama Muna gathered the pads into a sack and walked towards a food stall. Quietly, Shola followed her with her phone in hand. She watched from the shadows as Mama Mona washed the pads in a large bowl, chanting softly under her breath. Then, to Shola's shock, Mama Mona poured the water from the pads into a pot of soup. The next morning, Shola returned to the store with her friends. She showed the video to the crowd that had gathered, explaining what she had seen the previous night. The crowd erupted in anger, demanding answers. Knowing she has been caught red-handed, Mama Muna finally admitted the truth. She revealed that a powerful herbalist had once told her that using menstrual blood in food would bind men to her forever. She had tested it on her own husband when he went astray, and when it worked, she decided to expand the business, using the parts of students to ensnare the townsmen. She began by telling the townspeople why she resorted to using used parts to cook people's foods. Many years ago, Mama Muna married Papa Muna very early and they had nothing other than a bed inside a one-bedroom apartment where they had to share toilets, kitchen and bedroom with 9 other tenants. Mama Muna endured with her husband and she never complained, even though she had to go hungry on many occasions. Mama Mona did everything to make sure that her family did not find out about their financial status. She did this to prevent them from making her husband a laughing stock. Mama Mona would engage in different odd jobs to augment her husband's little salary to enable them save enough before the arrival of a baby in their home. Her husband would always praise her and appreciate her for her contentment and sacrifice. My love, I know that things are rough today, and I know you are doing everything to manage with me. But I want you to know that I will never disappoint you or treat you badly when things work out well for us. Thank you for all your love and sacrifices. 3 years later, the couple gave birth to their first child, Munachi, and after that, things began to change gradually for the couple. The financial status changed in a few months and Papa Muna got a bigger place for his family. Mama Muna was very happy that she didn't have to share a toilet and kitchen with others and she felt it was finally time for her to enjoy her marriage. But things did not work as she expected. Since Papa Muna now has money to spend around, he began to come back home late at night as he kept numerous girlfriends. Whenever his wife complained, he would lie that it was work that kept him from coming home early or spending days outside their home. At first, Mama Muna did not understand what was going on. She believed it was truly the workload at his workplace and she would advise her husband to complain at work for his employers to get more workers. My husband, your life is more important than this job and I do not want to lose you. Why not complain and let your workers get more ends? Mama Muna was worried because their family is growing. She has had 2 more kids and she needs her husband around the house. The kids would always complain about missing their dad, but when she calls, he will tell her that he's busy and will call back. But each time, he never bothered calling back. One day, she went to Papa Muna's workplace to talk to his boss. She explained how his absence at home is affecting the home front. It's been 3 weeks since my husband came out. I understand that he has to work hard to feed his family, but please, I want you to give him at least 5 minutes break every day so I can talk to him. It's been 5 days since we last spoke to him, and I'm not sure of what to tell the kids again. Papa Muna's boss opened his mouth wide in shock. He asked Mama Muna to wait while he called him. When Papa Muna saw his wife, he was very surprised. His boss asked him why he hasn't been going home regularly when he closes at 4 p.m. every day. But Papa Muna kept staring at the wall. Papa Muna gave his wife a cold look as if to warn her to stay away from his workplace, and Mama Muna got the message immediately. She told the boss that she was going home and they would sort it. But when Mama Muna got back that night, he asked his wife why she wanted to put him in trouble by coming to his workplace. He called his family members and told them that his wife wants to make him jobless. He avoided his wife's questions about not calling them or bothering to pick his calls. He screamed at Mama Muna whenever she asked the question. I'm sure you are happy now that the boss has suspended me for 2 weeks. He wants me to stay with my family for the 2 weeks. And he also warned that I might lose my job if I do not spend the entire time with you guys. At least I'm here now, and I'm sure that's what you want. Mama Muna picked his phone one night while he was asleep. The person at the end of the line asked him why he left home to see his wife and kids when she's already expecting him. She received other two calls from two women who claimed to be waiting for him too. Mama Muna's heart sank as she remembered all her years of suffering with Papa Muna. She was heartbroken. She cried for days and she began to lose weight. But Papa Muna never noticed because he was so concerned about seeing his numerous girlfriends. When Mama Muna told her friend about what her husband did, she took her to a strong herbalist. He told her to use a menstrual pad to cook for her husband and he will forget about all his girlfriends. At first, Mama Muna was skeptical as she didn't want to do anything to hurt her husband. But when he left her and her three kids again for more than 3 months, she knew she had to do something as soon as possible. She kept her used menstrual pads until her husband came back from his mistress's place. She cooked a nice meal with it and served them. And as soon as he tasted the food, he commended Mama Muna for the lovely meal. From that day onwards, Papa Muna began to stay more with his family. All this while, Papa Muna had lost his job because he spent most of his time around his numerous mistresses, neglecting his job and leaving Mama Muna with the burden of taking care of the house finances. So Mama Muna went back to doing menial jobs just to help the family survive. Mama Muna was mad at her husband because he had squandered all the money he made on his girlfriends when he should have invested it in properties or a good business. She would cry many times, wondering why a man she sacrificed so much to be with would treat her that way when he had money. Soon, things became very difficult for them and they had to move to a nearby town where her husband's friend has a house. Her husband's friend invested his own money by building a block of flats in different states around the country, so he asked them to stay in one of the flats in Ijede town. As soon as they got to the town, Mama Muna did not know what to do to make money. Her three kids were growing frail by the day and they looked malnourished. A few days later, she walked around the vicinity and found out there was a university nearby. She started to think of what to sell around the university to make students patronize her, but a lot of people were already into every business idea she came up with. One night, as she sat on the bed staring at her kids, a thought occurred to her. She thought of selling food in the vicinity, but she knows she would need to stand out to beat other food vendors close to the university. It was at that moment that the thought of cooking with menstrual pads occurred to her. Then she began to think of how to get more menstrual pads since she would be cooking large quantities of food. She then quickly remembered how she saw used menstrual pads inside the refuse dump close to the school gates and she became relieved and happy that her plan would work. From that day, Mama Muna would go at night when no one is looking and she would pick menstrual pads inside a bag, soaking it and using the water to cook sweet jollof rice and peppered meat and pomo to unsuspecting customers. The crowd was horrified by Mama Muna's story. They dragged the men away from her stall and pulled them back to their families. The women, furious and heartbroken, demanded that Mama Muna be punished. She led them to the herbalist home, but by then he had fled. The town was in turmoil. The students whose paths had been used were devastated, knowing they might never have children. Mama Muna pleaded for forgiveness, but the townspeople had no mercy. She was handed over to the authorities and banished from the town. From that day onwards, the university students disposed their paths far away from the prying eyes of people like Mama Muna. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. Leave a comment and share this video to enjoy more interesting tales. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.